Good evening and welcome to Veterans Breakfast Club Scuttlebutt for Monday, August 25th. My name is Sean Hall. I'm the Director of Programming with the Veterans Breakfast Club. It's great to see you all here this evening. As you all know, Todd, our Executive Director, and Glenn, our host for Thursday night, they are both on a European trip right now, taking a tour through the World War II battlefields. So I'll be flying solo tonight. So I appreciate all of your patience as I sort of get all of the tech stuff on the back end taken care of. But it's great to see you all. I see some new faces in the room. So thank you for being here. And like I said, we're Veterans Breakfast Club, and you can check us out on our website, www.veteransbreakfastclub.org. We've been around for 17 years, serving a mission of creating community around veterans and their stories to connect, educate, heal, and inspire. And it's been phenomenal. I was just telling Brennan in the green room before the program, we run the gamut of veteran stories from World War II up through the present and every conflict and war you can think of. We like to highlight it. Brennan's joining me tonight. He is the author of Valhalla Boys, Marine Recon Sniper in Iraq. Brennan, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing excellent. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. I was just saying it's great to have a post 9/11 vet on. We have Marine Colonel Brad Washabaugh with us, so I'm sure Brennan's going to be on best behavior this evening.
Hmm.
But I'm going to dive right into our conversation tonight because I feel like 90 minutes isn't even enough time to get through everything that we're going to want to talk about with Brennan. And I had a list of questions, but please feel free, everybody, to go ahead and put any questions that you have into the chat, or I may not be able to see your hand wave if you're waving at me to ask a question. If that happens, please, Brad or Ben, please just put it in the chat like, hey, Mark Spiritigliosi is waving his hand. He'd like to ask a question. That will at least alert me that somebody's asking because I will be in a different view here as I highlight Brennan. So, Brennan, again, thanks for being here and being a part of the Veterans Breakfast Club Scuttlebutt program. You were in the Marine Corps from '04 to '08, correct?
Yeah, late 08. Yep. I actually had to
So this is,
extend it. Yep. Good.
yeah, so you extended a bit?
Yeah, I had to extend 6 months of my contract to go to Iraq a second time. So it ended up being like 4.5 years.
Okay. Why did you pick Marines?
I think it was twofold. I think one, my godfather at the time was a Marine Corps pilot. And from the day I grew up, or when I was day I was old enough, I just heard they're the best, they're the hardest, you know. Uh, so it ended up being one of those things that like I just wanted to see how far I could go in the toughest branch and the toughest stuff. So I walked in. I remember I walked into the Marine Corps recruiting office, and it was true to form. He looked at me and he's like, "You're in the wrong place. Air Force is next door." And I was like, "Oh, oh." And then I joined right then. I was like, "No, you got me. Well done, sir." So,
Like, you're not going to tell me where to go. I'm gonna do this.
mhm.
This was after 9/11. Was 9/11 a deciding factor for you?
I think so. I grew up always wanting to be a soldier of some kind. It was in my blood. I had fatigues that my mom kept together, so and we would used to go to the Army Navy surplus store as kids. Like that was where we'd go instead of like the toy shop. I had fake guns. We played war in the woods almost all summer, all the way through the fall until it was like too snowy on the ground. So I grew up playing war and pretending I was a soldier. And I think for me, it was like, I kind of wanted to see if I could make it, if I could do it. Um, my parents were not about it. My parents did not like the idea of it. My grandfathers on both sides had been in the military, and both of my parents did not want me to be a part of it. Mostly for, I think that parental like safety thing, and there was nothing really going on. Um, so it was one of those things that they just didn't want me to. So they convinced me to go to college first. And they said, "Hey, get it. We'll help you pay for college. Go to college first, and then if you still want to go, we'll help you decide." Uh, I was in college. I was loving it. It was great. And then 9/11 happened. And I remember where I was. The moment it started, I was in the MUB, our Memorial Union building, and all of the TVs all around us flipped over to it. And I remember just watching 9/11 happen live. And the only and first thought was, this is it. I'm joining the second. I'm done here. I will be joining the military. And so my parents made me promise to finish out college, so I finished out my degree. And then I actually applied to be an officer first. Uh, but I had tattoos on my forearms. So they said, hey, go get those removed and then come on back when you're done and then we'll get you going. So after laser burn on my arm and a whole bunch of, rigmarole, I finally got those removed and I went back and they said, oh, it's going to be at least a year before we can get you enrolled because of 9/11. There was so many people stacking up in the officer program. So I said, okay, well, I'm going to go enlist. And they're like, what do you mean? I was like, no, I'll going to enlist. So that day I walked over to the enlisted guy and I enlisted. I said, I'm going infantry. He said, no, 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 no. You have college. You have a good GT score. And I was like, nope, going 0311. That's what I want. Let's go. So he finally signed me a contract and I ended up hurting my knee during a Poolee program. So it took a little bit, but then I shipped off to the Marine Corps.
What's interesting is for those of you here, this book, Valhalla Boys, I told Brennan I was laughing hysterically through the first good 100 or plus pages of the book. Just the type of stuff. These are the things that we all sit around here and talk at BBC about, like, oh, what was basic like? Well, Brennan put it all down in writing. There's a really great amount of stories that were him learning about the Marine Corps, getting into it with his unit. But one of the things that you said in this, and I just thought it to be a funny quote, was I joined the military with all the violence of a kitten. So maybe like that gumption that you had to like, I'm going in. But was there the mindset of a Marine behind that?
I didn't know, and I guess that was the question that burns inside, right? I was the smallest boy in my class till eighth grade. I had bullies. I got the piss beaten out of me on the regular. Like I was bullied most of my young career. I was never physically imposing. I was in theater in high school. Like I was not the kid that anyone would have pointed at and been like, "That's the future of the Marine Corps." But I always had that thing inside me of like, could I do it? Like I wanted to, and so when I joined, I don't think. I'll put it in perspective. There was kids in my boot camp class that I could look at and be like, there's a kid who knew he was going to be a Marine from the get-go. It's just a different breed of person, huge chip on their shoulder, just like, just violence and just forward, forward, forward. And I was a bookish, skinny, just little kid comparatively. I was not like I said, like I wasn't physically imposing. Uh, but I really wanted it. And I think that I just had to say, could I have done it? Could I have made it? Uh, because I think if I didn't answer that question, it would have haunted me the rest of my life. So I was decided that I'm going to try. Worst case scenario, I do my 4 and I get out, or I just don't make the cut somehow. Because actually, a lot of guys in my boot camp class did not make the cut, and actually were sent home for various reasons, injuries, stuff like that. So no, I don't think my parents thought I could make it either, to be brutally honest. Like I think they kind of had that moment when they were just saw their little boy who I don't think thought I was going to go as far as I did, for sure.
Through East or West?
East Coast.
Okay, I was your commanding officer at the time.
No kidding.
I was the CO of the School of Infantry at Camp Geiger there from 2003 to 2005. So let me pull a file on you and see what we got.
Yeah. Did you happen, sir? Did you happen to oversee when sniper school got brought under SOI?
Yes. Yes,
Oh,
I
okay.
did.
So yeah, because I was supposed to teach sniper school. I chose not to re-up for marital reasons, but
Yeah.
I was supposed to come and teach, and because I was one of the last classes to go to Stone Bay.
Yes,
And then when I got back from my deployment, it had been brought under SOI. So
that's
I was
right.
just
Yeah.
neat.
Well, it's good to see you aboard tonight, and thank you for coming.
Thank
And
you,
we're
sir.
really interested in your story. Thank you.
All right, appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
I was going to ask about the bug incident because, as you said, you were like, all these guys were sort of like there were some guys that were built to be Marines and some guys who
Yep.
were not. And like you decided that you were going to like you were going to be
I
the guy that they could count on no matter what.
I think I had a huge advantage. I was 4 years older than almost every guy in my squad bay. So I had 4 years away from my parents, 4 years to kind of see the world and see what kind of person I wanted to become. Like I felt I was a lot more not mature. I'm certainly not mature, but I definitely felt like I was on a different level, seeing there was a lot of kids coming in from their parents' household where they came in straight from, they lived with mommy and daddy. They're now in the Marine Corps. Where I had had 4 years to kind of go see the world. I actually traveled right before I joined. The reason that it took a little bit is I actually drove around in a truck for 3 months around the country alone and just saw the United States, every bit of it. I saw every national park. I saw everything I wanted to see because I didn't want not to be morbid, I didn't want to die for the country and not see the whole thing. So I went cross country alone in a truck for almost like 3.5, 4 months. So I felt like I knew what I wanted, and I wanted it, I think, more than anybody in that squad bay. And so while they were all busy trying to file the chips off their shoulder, I was ready to be the best soldier I could be. They could have given me any order and I would have done it without. I never complained, never, I was the first to volunteer for everything. I was the first to put myself out there for anything they needed. I wanted to make sure that I was doing my part. And so the bug incident was kind of indicative of who I was in the squad bay. Because again, I'm not the biggest by far. I was, 155 pounds coming out of boot camp. So I was not at all, physically imposing, but I think I made up for that with my zealotry. I wanted to be changed. I wanted to be a Marine. And I had a great senior drill instructor. He was fantastic. I would have done anything he asked at any point in time. Obviously, if you read the book, you will see that I did. uh, but so at no point was there, they didn't need to break me. They didn't need to, take this chip off my shoulder. I was there willing, like I was ready. Where I feel like a lot of boot camp and what boot camp is and I even said it in my book, the remolding of someone, melting them down, getting rid of all the I's and me's, and then just building them back up. They didn't need to do that with me. I was ready from the day I hit the ground. I was ready to do whatever. And I think that carried me through boot camp, School of Infantry. I actually got, I was supposed to be honor grad of School of Infantry, but I'd already picked up Lance Corporal meritoriously. So instead, they gave me a different award they made up and gave my a meritorious promotion to somebody else because I couldn't be an E4 coming out of School of Infantry. So I was the person that, for the most part, in most of my career, people would go to for getting things done. I was almost always in charge. I was almost always given a leadership role because I wanted it. And I proved that, like, I wasn't some 18-year-old kid who has, just is finally away from his mom and dad and gonna get in trouble on the weekends. Like, for the most part, I was nose straight and just hard charging.
And I noticed a lot of the ways that almost the best ways you define yourself and who you are in the book is by defining a lot of the guys that were around you in basic. Like we get a
Hmm.
really good idea of who you are because of how well you describe everybody.
Hmm. Well, it's funny because I guess what people don't understand is like I, I'm not a soldier or a Marine who wrote a book. I am a writer who happened to join the Marine Corps. Like I always wanted to write. This has been my passion. When Casemate picked up my book, it was like literally the happiest day of my life, and I've had some pretty happy days because it was my lifelong dream since I was a little kid to be a published writer. My mom used to have a stack of books on her bedside stand. My dad too. Reading was huge in my family. We'd read every night as a family. I remember sitting on my mom's bed reading Bridge to Terabithia and Where the Red Fern Grows and crying as a family. And like, so I saw books and writing as like the most important thing I could possibly do, as far as me, the thing I thought I was good at and the thing I wanted to do. And so one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to experience a lot of things. I wanted to see people, meet people. And so I kind of joined the military And I think I say it in the book because like I have to see, I have to know because you start to read Vonnegut, you start to read Joseph Heller, Catch 22, and you start to read some of these guys, and they just make war sound like it's just awful, and you're like, wow, that is provocative. That is the single-handed most profound thing I think someone can go through. Uh, obviously, death is, I think, are the scariest thing a human being can go through. And in the military, you're just surrounded by it at almost all times, and you are at all times in danger of, getting killed. And so I think for me, it was one of those like, couldn't I couldn't imagine my life as a writer not experiencing some of the things, especially some of the great writers had. And I'd always wanted to be a soldier, so it just kind of matched up, and it ended up working well. So a lot of the stories that you're reading in the book, if you, I wrote letters home to my parents, not like a normal person would write, like, dear mom and dad. It was like, hold on, I got to write notes for this. And I would like do character sketches and I would do notes for like what happened. And so when I got home, I had a stack of letters that I sent basically to myself of all the things I went through, all the things, because I thought this would be good stuff for my future. Like if I ever wrote a memoir of like what happy times the military was. I'd have these things. There's actually a picture if you go to the middle of the book and you open it up, and I think it's my Thanksgiving meal. It shows me eating over a little tin can. I'm eating like I think it's tuna fish and saltine crackers crumbled up into it. That was my Thanksgiving meal that year. But I have a notebook next to me where I'm doing stories, where I'm writing down all the things that happened for later. Um, and one of the things I'm glad I did that is some of the stories became so harrowing and so just messed up. Yeah, I see you have it.
Yeah, I found it. I think
Yeah,
it's this one, right?
yep.
Everyone
And
can
so
look
if
at
you
my
see right
screen.
next to me on my left, like that's my notebook. I actually just found that notebook about 6 months ago, after not seeing it for years. And I got to go through and kind of relive the stories as I had written them at that time with all the notes.
Mhm.
Because there's one story in the book that, not to give away too much, but my medic puts his fist inside my friend's leg, and I was like, man, did I make that up? Did that just seems so crazy? And I got my binder and I found it again and I looked it up and there it was. And then God, last September, Clark from the book just retired from the Marines. He ended up being in the Raiders. He ended up in some of the highest teams and echelons there are in the military. So Clark went on to be the operator I said he was going to be.
Mhm.
But he had a retirement party, so my whole team was there. So we started talking stories, and I asked, I think I call him Spears in the book. I asked Spears from the book. I was like, "Do you remember the medic sticking his hand in your leg?" And he's like, "Oh my God, I was so mad at him." I was like, "Oh, okay, I didn't make that up. That happened. Okay." So like I had all these stories and I had all these notes that I wrote myself in these books. And so as you go through like boot camp, especially boot camp, because I got a lot more time now, I hate to say right. Um, Boot camp, SOY, stuff like that. Like I that's what I was a lot of the time was I was doing because I am not a gregarious person by nature. I'm not an extrovert. I'm pretty introverted. So I spent a lot of my time like writing and making myself notes and stuff as like, oh, this might be cool later. I might need to reference this. I never planned to write an entire book on it, especially this book. That was never my intention, but it kind of happened that way. And in a way, I'm glad it did because I had a lot more visceral, there in the moment notes, poetry, stuff I had written down, like fragments of sentences that I could go back and kind of relive. Because the book wasn't written for till, so I experienced all that stuff. This is probably 2006, I want to say. I can't remember the exact dates. About 2006. That book probably wasn't written till about 2010 because I had to get out of the military in 2008. I started 2 years of intense therapy at the VA. And it was actually through the VA that the book started to be not written. But so in the book, there's a chapter called the night written 100 times. And that was what I had to do for my therapy is I had to take some of my trauma and I had to write it down. And then I had to write it down again and write it down again to try to start to get past some of these things. Cause I blame myself for a lot of what happened in the book as you read it. So it was for me, The book came out of this trauma of writing it down a bunch of times, and then I had a few of these horrible stories written down, and I was like, man, I had some good stories too. Like I feel like I had some funny stuff, and I feel like I had some some other stuff. So I started writing, and then it just kind of ballooned from there.
Yeah.
um funny story, side note, but Casemate Publishing, my editor Ruth, I did not put the chapters in that order. So if you read the book, it
Mm.
has a really nice, funny beginning, and then it just drops hard to the end. Originally, I wrote it was like funny, funny, horrible, funny, funny, horrible, funny, funny, horrible, because I was like, oh, I don't want people to get too sad. She's like, nah, let's just drop it. I was like, all right. So
Mhm.
I didn't write, like, so most of those are like kind of standalone stories. They weren't written in order, and they put the order together as far as that goes. So some of them aren't even in the right chronological, but that's how a lot of the stories came to be, is just notes from a notebook while I was there, just jotting down notes and stuff like that.
We're jumping ahead a bit with sort of like this next question, but
Mhm.
the idea of having to write down a story, 100 times or whatever number it was, um, to deal with something very traumatic. How did you give yourself the motivation to even accomplish even that goal? And this is well before you deciding to make this a book, but even using that sort of passion of writing, how did you not get sick of writing even at that point?
I was. So I think it came out of what is it? The necessity is the mother of invention. Uh when I got out of the Marine Corps, I thought I was okay, right? We all bottled it up, you put it inside your head, you left. When I got to my first house outside the Marine Corps, I moved to Scranton, Pennsylvania, basically. Um, it was like the container inside cracked open. I had definitely compartmentalized a whole lot,
Mhm.
and I was not sleeping for like 3 nights in a row, and then the fourth night I would just like pass out, and it just kept happening. I was having horrible nightmares. At the same time, I had started a business where I was working 12 to 16 hours a day. And so thank God for one of my best friends, Kyle, because within a couple months, I had just rucksacks under my eyes, and I just looked like shit. Um, I'd run myself into the ground, and I realized I needed help because it was just getting worse. So I checked into the VA, which was the best decision of my life, hands down. And I had by far, I think, the greatest therapist, because I've had many therapists since, because they change out, unfortunately, because they don't stay. Uh, but my first one was amazing, and he really first words out of his mouth I can remember was, I have no idea what you went through, but I'm here to listen, and I want to experience and, like, get to know you. And we just got along so well, and I didn't want to do all the work because I would be so messed up from our sessions that I almost would, like, I'd have to go back to work because I do it on my lunch break, and I have to go back to work and try to, like, not cry anymore, or, like, freak out and rage. So I'd go home, and it's like the last thing you want to do with your wife, and you're just home for work and you have to go to bed in 2 hours. It's like, sit down and cry some more as you write out some stories. But
Mhm.
he really pounded home the value of, hey man, like, you're not going to get over this. This is not going away. Like, it's going to get worse. Like, just do the work now, and you can start to get to function again. So I did, and I saw such a change so kind of dramatically. I'd say that in 6 months I saw a dramatic change in how I was feeling about stuff, and like how um because at the time, and even still now, but a little less now, like, I blame myself for a lot of deaths in the book. So if you read the book, like, a lot of shitty things happened, and I at the time I was suicidal, with the idea that I had killed so many of my own men, and a lot of it was just getting over that, and the feeling that, like, there's nothing you can do sometimes. Like, bad shit just happens, and you have to kind of move on.
Mhm.
So it's just one of those things that, like, you don't want to do it, but once it starts to feel good, once it starts to feel like you're moving forward a little bit, and you've just been at rock bottom, you're just like, oh, I'll do anything at this point. So I wrote that thing probably about 100 times. There's actually, I think, two more stories in the book that I also had to write a few times, about. And then once I had written those, I actually felt like a relief to write the funny ones, to write the amusing ones. Because, like, again, like, for as shitty and terrible as my deployment was, I still look back fondly on my Marine Corps days. Like I still like people will ask me like, "Oh, you wouldn't do it again, would you?" I was like, "In a heartbeat." Like one, like I still think it was necessary. Like I'm glad I joined. It made me the man I am today. But all the good that happened, there was a 1% of it was just god awful. And then
Yeah.
99% of it was things I would never, ever be able to get to do in the civilian world, ever, in a million years, that showed me who I was, how strong I was, and what I'm capable of. And
And
so
it
it
made
was
you a
just,
better writer.
yeah, oh, 100%. Yeah, listening to some of the guys' stories, like just sitting down and be like, hey, man, I want to hear all about your stories. Tell me your funny, tell me your horrible stories. And just listening to other people's tales, man. Like my dad, uh, I used to love listening to my dad tell stories around the campfire. It's like one of my favorite things. My dad's just a natural born storyteller. So I used to love just asking people, be like, hey man, like tell me a story. And some of them are in the book, and some of them get real dark. And some of them are really funny. And so like it just like you realize the military, all branches, all MOSs and stuff, they're such a diverse slice of humanity. Like there's no socioeconomic, religion, race, creed, color, everything. It was such a big swath of everyone that like that is the true melting pot of America right there is the military. And it was amazing. It was so awesome to be able to sit down with so many different various people from places all over the country, and just listen to their stories of how they got there. Um, because in the end, that's what kind of interested me, but then also like what got me through it is us just sitting around and talking to each other. And like, I remember a lot of nights spent in Iraq when the shit was just getting real heavy, when we're all just telling stories about home or something funny. And like, we had one guy during our training when it was at the absolute worst who always had that joke or that story at the right time that like everyone like, boom, you're back up to 100%. You can go for a few more miles. And I just think it's a beautiful thing. And it really, I think it did make me a much better writer.
Do you think that writing those stories out as many times as you did it help you eventually deal with that guilt feeling, or at least come to terms with it in some way?
Yes. I wouldn't be giving this interview otherwise, to be honest. Like
Yeah.
we talked about in the green room, like, even the first interviews I did, like, the more you kind of discuss something and kind of look at it from all angles and listen to other people's opinions about it, the more you can start to get out of the little, I always call it the cold cave, the little echo chamber in your head where, like, you're always the worst. It's always the most horrible situation. Like, you're now in kind of an audience format where you can listen to people talk about this thing that now, especially in book format, they've read it and now are talking back to you about it. Where before it was just, it lived in my head and it was just in my head. And I was the only person that could really could get into it. I'll tell you, like, this kind of goes away from the book, but that retirement party I was just talking about in last September was, I would say, the single most important moment in my life. I would say in the last 20 years. That includes the birth of my daughter and all this other stuff, because it was the first time my team had gotten together since that deployment, because we all went to different places. I got out, my team leader. It was the first time every one of us had been together in the same spot. And it was the first time I watched my other teammates break down and start crying and
Wow.
actually start like being like, hey man, I'm not okay from that. I thought it was just me this entire time for 16, 17 years. I was like, man, it's just me. It's, I'm the odd one. I'm the weak link, because all of them others seemed to like no problem during combat, no problem when we were getting out. They all later, and listening to their stories about how they had to come to terms with a lot of it. Um, Scotty Boom, Scotty Boom Boom in the story. I remember listening to him talk about how he's now working as a police. He's a lone policeman with his police dog, and he says, "I cannot work with a partner. It's just me talking to my dog all day because I'm still not okay from what happened." And you're just like, "Oh my God, like I'm not alone in this." Like for so long, I thought I was alone in my, crazy. And so it was really helpful for me to hear all the guys, including Clark, who literally just got out of probably the top tier unit in the entire US military. Even he had 2 years where he was not okay and had to go seek help and stuff like that from some of the stuff he saw. Um, and so it became one of those things that like I didn't feel alone anymore.
Yeah.
And I got a lot of more kind of objectiveness looking down at it where I could see it and say, oh, okay. Like, yeah, that sucked, but it definitely like it wasn't as bad as I made it in my own head.
So like I said, we sort of had jumped ahead a bit, but I like that we did in a way because I feel like we've talked about how you were right when you came in, and the enthusiasm that you had, and wanting to be a Marine and deciding to go infantry, and then sort of the transition out and the creation of the book and the stories. But what we didn't really get into and what we've alluded to so far is that
Mhm.
first
Yeah.
deployment in Iraq. And maybe we can at least start to dip our toe into that in the sense of like, how did you get selected for recon? And then getting into how you got to Iraq and where you were deployed to in country.
So Recon was amazing. Recon was my, so I did absolutely no research about the military before I joined. I was like the worst military guy ever. I just knew I wanted to be an infantry Marine. That's what I thought. I didn't even know recon existed, to be honest. I had heard of like the Navy SEALs and like that kind of stuff, but I'd never heard of. I just joined the Marine Corps. And somewhere during SOI, somewhere in like the first couple weeks, they're like, "Hey, if you have a high enough GT score, which is like the ASVAB test equivalent, and a high enough PFT, physical fitness test, you can go sit for the talk about maybe trying out for recon." And I want to say it was awesome. I was very excited. I had no idea really what it was, and I started looking into it then. I was like, "Oh, that sounds hard and amazing." And I remember one of my two of my SOI instructors at the time were like Bronze Star, Silver Star winners. Like they were just awesome dudes. And they just looked at us like, none of you are going to make it. Oh, okay. So we went out, we sat down on this big bench. I want to say like 85 of us sat down on this bench. And all of a sudden, here comes this guy bebopping down, out of nowhere, wearing sunglasses, just like he's at a different place. He's not on a Marine Corps base in his mind. He's like at a mall, just kind of hanging out. And he like walks up in front of us and he takes his glasses off and he's like, "Oh, my name's Gunny Sergeant Raybon." I remember. And he's like, "Here's my speech. Uh, Chicks dig recon. None of you are gonna make it." Turned around and walked away. That was it. That was the entirety of the speech. Chicks dig recon. None of you are going to make it. And I think he gave some details real quick and then left. And that was it. That was our entire recon speech. No questions answered, no nothing. And it was like catnip. I was like, I don't know what this is, but I gotta see what this is about. And but it's funny because like 30 dudes right then, boom, he got him. Oh, okay, he said it. I'm not gonna make it. I'm not gonna try. And so I think like 50 of us ended up that Friday. I think it was like a Monday or Tuesday when he did the speech. That Friday morning at like, oh, I think we had to get up at 0300. We had to be at the pool at 0500. We started the indoc, which was just the entry point to even get into the holding tank to maybe take the test to possibly become a recon Marine. So this is like stage one of like 3 or 4 stages. And it is basically swimming to an absurd degree. And if anyone's listening, whoever wanted to take the recon indoc, swimming is everything. Like if you cannot swim well, you're not going to make it. And I don't mean that in like a mean way. Like because it's what ended up happening is a lot of guys were like, "Oh, I can swim." I grew up swimming. Like I grew up in the mountains in New Hampshire, swimming in lakes and rivers every day of my life that it wasn't frozen over. I loved swimming. It was hard for me. And I know it was hard for guys who would just kind of learn to swim from the Marines. They're like, "Oh, I can swim. I can get, my first." Um, it was the most brutal, draconian, lovely thing I've ever seen in my life. It was just test after test after test after test. And once they've killed you in the pool, then you get out and then you run your PFT right away. And it was the hardest PFT I've taken in my life. And you had to once again score above a first class PFT, which I think of the 50 some odd that tried, I think only five of us made the cutoff there. And then I think only three of us made the teams after that. Because then we went to the holding tank, which is its own 6 months of intense. It's run by Reconnaissance Marine. I actually sense, I believe Brad was probably there for the changeover. I believe Recon has now been brought under SOI as far as the training, but it used to be run by the Recon Marines themselves as like a separate, like you were in the barracks with them. You were like kind of we call them ropes. You wore a rope all the time around that you had to tie knots with when everyone ever asked you. But it was all internal, so there was no oversight. There was no one watching for anything, and it was no holds barred. They were trying to winnow you down as hard as they could, so that when they sent the last of us to the schoolhouse, which was a gentleman's course, like Ranger School or Buds or whatever. So that's our Buds. I went on the East Coast, so we were in Little Creek, basically, Little Creek, Virginia. So we would train in the SEAL pool in the morning, and then we had our own little private compound out in the middle of nowhere where we would just beach runs, sand dune runs, like everything all day.
Mhm.
I think that was 10 or 12 weeks. And then at the end, if you still had, but it was set up like a school. So we had classes all day, like actual classes where we had to sit and learn everything about boats, everything about land nav, everything about it, pretty much everything. Jack of all trades, master of none. Uh, and then you would be tested on that academically. Didn't pass, you're out. Then we'd be physically challenged. We had a ruck run or a fin every Friday. If you didn't pass, you're out. And so it just quickly just started dwindling down to this core group. Then we did Hell Week up in the mountains of Virginia, which was that was some terrain that I didn't know they made mountains like that, but it was and same thing. You had 7 days. If you failed anything, you're out. And so it just kept winnowing down, and then after that, I remember I graduated, and then so I graduated on a Friday, and I think Monday I was in my first team doing my first patrol on Lejeune in the swamp.
Hmm.
Just doing like we would do week long pretend mission sets where they'd be like, "Hey, we're gonna look for you. Go hide. See you in a week. Here's your stuff." And we just have to go report on stuff and like, oh, it was awesome. It was a little boy's dream who grew up in New Hampshire playing War in the Woods. It was everything I hoped and imagined it could be.
How do they get enough guys to be recon if it's that selective and that difficult?
It's like any so I'll tell you a reverse story. I remember sitting on we just finished up our PT at like 4 a.m. at the Navy SEAL pool, and there's all of a sudden 300 dudes are sitting there, and we're like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Oh, it's Bud's tryout." We're like, "Oh my God, how many of these guys are gonna make it?" They're like three, those three probably. We're like, "Oh my God," but they just do it enough, and enough and enough and enough, and there's enough classes because I remember. I ended up having to wait a while to go to the schoolhouse because I was the first new group before after the last group went, so it has to like build back up. So when I
Mhm.
got to the holding tank, God, I think there was only like nine of us. By the time the schoolhouse rolled around, they've done the indoc so many times, every class of SOI, everything, that all of a sudden I think we shipped to 40 something guys total to into the schoolhouse from that's also including the East Coast, the West Coast, sorry. That's also including Okinawa. We had some guys from Okinawa coming in to try out. And so they just run back and forth. So it was like 2 times a year you could be a recon Marine. And so there's enough guys who, wanted it bad enough that, it stayed pretty good. So we had a decent amount of numbers. And you're already and this is gonna this is gonna sound really arrogant. You're already picking from some of the hardest people I've ever met. Like the Marines, like boot camp already broke off the weaklings and the people who didn't want to be there. School of Infantry, same thing. So all of a sudden, like you're already pretty well deep into your training set. And most of the guys, believe it or not, we had a few bell ringers in Recon, uh, the holding tank. We had a few bell ringers. but a lot more were injuries. A lot more were like things just came up. We had one guy who got trench foot. Like I didn't think that was a real thing in this day and age. Like watched his foot slough
Yeah.
off, like because we had just been out in the swamp for 3 days in a row and he never changed his socks. So stuff like that. So a lot of it was not that they didn't want to be there or they weren't good enough at that point when we're at the schoolhouse. It was just injuries or academics, to be honest. Academics took a lot more guys out than I think the physicality did.
And all during this, did you know what was going on in Iraq? Because Iraq kicked off in, was it 03?
Yeah. No, not a single thing. It was almost like we were. It's a bubble. Like we call it the pipeline. You
Hmm.
get put in the recon pipeline, and you're just going through, and all you can think about is the next meal. You don't want to know about anything else going on about anybody. Like you just care about making the next hard time and making sure you're where you need to be. And so like it was almost not just that Iraq didn't exist. It almost was like the world itself did not exist except for the tiny little bubble that we lived inside. Because anything else was just like I hate to say, like, girlfriends got broken up with, and like relationships with parents got strained because like you would just stop talking to anybody because all you could really do is focus on. I remember, especially like at the schoolhouse, you could earn your weekends liberty. It was not a given. Like you didn't get liberty. You had to earn it by scoring in the top like 20% of the Fridays, Finner, the Ruck. And I remember me and my friend Stitch were the only two to actually get liberty that weekend, and we spent it studying for the next test. So it wasn't like it was, and we ended up just buying food and bringing it back to all the other guys anyway. So it was like we all just hung out in this little group, and just everyone was all about like, let's just get to the next phase of training. Let's get to the next wherever we're going. It wasn't until we hit my first team and I met Gunny Riv, Bobby Rivera, who's super decorated Recon Marine, won team leader of the year in Force Recon, uh, just one of the best shooters I've ever seen in my life. It wasn't until I met him and he started talking about what we were going into combat style because he was just coming out of Force and had just gotten the flag rolled up, and so they were coming out of the Force Recon teams now as our platoon sergeants straight from combat zones that I didn't even know we were in at all, to get us revved up for Iraq. And they were just getting some of the first intel back from the guys who were over there, trying to make up standing operator procedure, trying to make up drills. Because it was one of those things like, well, this is not where, this was not Vietnam. This was not Korea. This is a totally different, mission set and stuff like that. So there was a lot to change and learn.
Completely different culture,
Yeah,
landscape,
everything.
yeah,
So,
environment, atmosphere, all of it.
because we're sitting in Lejeune, which if no one's ever been there, it is a swamp. It is. I would step out my back door of my barracks, and it's just swamp. And then we're training in swamp, pretending to be in a desert. So it's one of those like kind of like you just have to go with it and just like do your best because our soft skills never change. Like you needed to know certain things, how to land navigate, how to use a camera, how to get communication and stuff. But it wasn't until I would say halfway through our first workup that like we started to get like, oh, this is like IEDs are actually a real thing. Um, Scotty Boom, who ended up being who was my assistant team leader, and then ended up being my team leader when my team leader was hit, uh, had already got hit with an IED. He was just coming out of Iraq, and he got hit with an IED. And so when we went back, our team was, I hate to say, like IED ready, because he was like, no shit, guys, like this is gonna happen, like this is a reality. Where a lot of guys, I think it was like a learning experience. Like I think
Yeah.
those first few waves into Iraq, and even like 2004, I'd say actually 2006, uh, some Battle of Fallujah's happened. A lot of that stuff has happened. And all of a sudden they switched over. They realized they're not going to beat you in a stand-up fight. They're not going to beat you looking in your eye. They're going to beat you by blowing you up from afar. And so we got there right at the height of the IED, or right at the beginning of the IED uptick, when all of a
Okay.
sudden that was their go-to. and we weren't even prepared for it. Like EOD gave us a little speech right before we did Wheels on the Ground for the first time. Like, hey guys, like this is serious. Like this just started like about a month ago, but like trucks are getting hit every day. We're like, okay, okay. So
I'm gonna bookmark real quick just because I unmuted Brad. Because Brad, you were Desert Shield, Desert Storm. How much of the lessons that we learned from Desert Shield, Desert Storm got carried over to the Iraq War in '03? Because it seems like a lot of things were like, well, it seems like we were still learning as we were going at that point.
Yeah, I think, a key lesson here is the importance of training and quality training and having instructors that have been there and being in an environment that really teaches. I mean, when you're in the Marine Corps, you go through different phases, as Brennan has described. By the time you get to your unit or school of infantry, your knowledge is being honed to what to expect in real terms. And being around other instructors that have been in combat and can talk very candidly about that, I think it really helps. But I think the students are at that time very focused on they're going to go to war. They're going to be in combat. So I think for the most part, it's razor sharp as far as their attention goes, and also the expectations of the student and the instructors. It's a very serious business. But what you've heard from Brennan is a very good description of the training pipeline and the importance of that. And so I'm just enthralled by the discussion here. It's very, very good.
Brennan, did you feel ready when you hit boots on the ground?
uh I can say without a doubt, I don't know if anyone else was more ready than my team. We had everything going for us. We literally, and I cannot stress this, my platoon sergeant is hands down probably one of the best Marines I could possibly imagine. He has seen it all, done it all. Just an amazing guy, great leader, great, great, just all around guy. All our training was superb. Everything, we had the best of everything. We could not have been more prepared. And I think what it did is it kind of made me sad for some of the like the National Guard units and some of the other units who were, I think, not as prepared. Because again, my pipeline it ended up taking me almost a year and a half before we got to Iraq, like
Hmm.
maybe even 2 years. So from the time I joined the Marine Corps till the time I'm deploying, I've had 2 solid years of training, of intense. We shot more. My platoon shot more than most infantry battalions before we went over. I mean, we just had truckloads of ammo. So like we were as prepared as I think most any unit could be going to Iraq, as far as it went. So at no point was I like, oh, we were not prepared in every way possible for this. I think the problem becomes psychologically you are not, you like Brad said, like you're razor sharp, you're going to war, but the realities of war has not set in. I can tell you, I remember specifically uh when we were doing our workup, you have to go to California for 3 weeks. 29 Palms, you have to do this like 3 week training. Every Marine unit leaving to the desert has to go. It was fun, but it was fun. It was just the normal shoot at this range, go to this range, do this. Until I can tell you the moment when this shit hit home. Uh, they're like, "Oh, we're gonna do some medical training." You're like, "Oh, great, great, great!" And all of a sudden, a bomb goes off. Like a little, like I mean, it's and they're like, "Hey, go in that building and go save someone." And I ran in with my team, and there is a quadruple amputee spurting blood everywhere, screaming his head off. And my mind, for a moment, I was like, did a bomb really go off? And I was like, I was gobsmacked. For a few seconds, I was completely gobsmacked. And that was the first time I was like, oh, this is what's going to happen later on. And it ended up being they actually hire actors for this. He was an actual quadruple amputee with like prosthetics that are like, and you have to go save him, but your brain still hasn't made that like transition yet. And so like everyone thinks they're ready. Everyone's like, yeah, this is going to be great, right until that first thing happens. And then I think it kind of hits home. And then you realize, then you get into the mind of war, like the war mindset. Um,
Can you lead me up to that moment for you?
For us, so I think I had two moments. The first moment was we were doing this battle damage assessment. We had been attacked. Um, we were having a really hard time engaging the enemy, like having a stand-up fight. So we baited them into attacking what they thought was a soft target, which ended up being an entire platoon of very ready recon Marines. And then we had satellite sniper positions and gunmen hidden around our little base. And so they came up, they took a few pot shots, and they started to run. One of them got hit. They ran into this horrible village in the Zidon, just probably the worst place they could have possibly gotten into.
And
So
as a side note, Zidon is where you were deployed to. You were
yes,
sent there when you
yes,
landed in Iraq.
yep. So like Fallujah's up here, and the Zidon's just the river kind of curves around, and it makes this little like sack right here. That's where we were, and it was probably from what we were told by everybody else, it was the worst place in Iraq because it was the most tribal, and not even Saddam Hussein's elite guards would go in there because they'd kill them too. So it was this weird, like there was insurgents, but then there was also these locals who were like, "Hey, don't come in here. We're gonna murder all of you if you do." And we were like, "Well, we still have to run missions." So I think 10 of us were doing this battle damage assessment, chasing these guys through a village, and I got my first sense of I had to keep a post, and a guy walked up and he took out a phone and he was on his phone. And at that point, I was in the rules of engagement to take him down because at that point in Iraq, they were not allowed to have phones, have guns. Like you were like you were basically he was basically a forward observer, and we were in a very precarious situation. And right then, a convoy of Humvees was coming down to resupply us. So everything really kind of just coalesced into the idea like this is a forward observer and we're about to either get shelled, blown up, something. And I had my crosshairs on his head, and nobody had taken a shot since we got there. Like no, there had been no offensive shots. No, like, and so I ended up not taking the shot. Um, and nothing happened, and he wasn't a forward observer. But that day really stuck with me for almost my entire life. Because I think a little bit later, not 2 months later, if I had been put in that same situation, I would have taken the shot. Because at that time, I feel like I was really naive to tactics, and I was really naive to the realities of what could happen to our guys. So we're gonna fast forward about not even a month or two. So this is the night written 100 times synopsis. We were put on a cordon where we were going to do a battalion-sized op, which is insane for recon. We operate on team level, but they decide that they're going to do a battalion-size op, and we are going to basically make a giant L shape around this huge area with like 3 villages. The river goes through it, and the idea was that in the L shape, we'd be all pretty much supporting each other and making sure no one escaped. Well, an assault element came across and basically knock and talked and looked in every hole and every well and made sure there was no weapon. Like we were basically going to do one giant sweep of a large chunk of our area. What people don't understand and what we didn't understand going over is 90% of Iraq is desert. It is exactly what you picture. The Euphrates River that runs through it is a jungle, like a full-fledged palm trees, giant palm fronds jungle. So where we were operating was lush greenery. There was mud that would suck a boot off in about 10 seconds. Like it was incredible. So we get this plan that we're going to do an L-shape cordon. We're going to push through. It's going to take 3 hours. That's the idea. Boots hit the ground, and all of a sudden, each platoon is supposed to be within sight of the next platoon in the trucks, right? We are the corner one. We are the pivot point. We can't see anybody else. They can't see anybody else. The assault elements can't see us. Like nothing is going the way it's supposed to be. But they're like, hey, we're gonna do this anyway. We're gonna see what we get. So the assault starts. instantaneously we know things are going horrible because they are in the 3 hours we were allotted. They haven't even begun to make it where they were supposed to because all of a sudden every field has been flooded for the to sow crops, and it's just this black stuff that like so they're now having to go around things and like so all of a sudden we're there. We were supposed to be there in the morning till about noon. We are there at 6 p.m. still, just waiting. And I, what made me nervous is that Gunny Riv was just pacing back and forth, and he was not happy. And there was just like that, like he's like, sir, this is not good. We should not be here. We have been static in a known insurgent stronghold for far too long. And what can captain, what can my captain do? He's like, yep, I hear you. Like nothing we can do. We're gonna stay hit put until we're told to otherwise. And it's just like, oh, okay. And this entire time that we're sitting on this little L, these kids are coming up. The families from the village that's like, I'd say around the corner, around the bend of trees, it's like feeding us food and they're hanging out with us and asking us questions. And like, it was actually really cute. Like, because we were told to bring candy to make sure the kids like us. So we're throwing candy to the kids. If they want to play soccer with us, it's like, so we're trying to stay, professional. So it's like, hey, yeah, we'll talk to you, but like, we're going to stay in our truck. You're going to stay over there. So they did this for shit, maybe 12 hours of just basically making sure we stayed in our vehicles because they say, hey, it wheels up, we're done. We're going to exfil. We're going to take the only road that is leading out of this place. River Road is just as wide as a Humvee, no wider, and about 6 to 12 feet at points off of the fields. So it's just like a plateau of just a small road. So it is the worst driving conditions you could possibly imagine. So we get in our trucks. We are suicide trucks. So we're the first truck in the convoy. I was supposed to be driving. Scotty Boom, for some reason, had a weird feeling. He was up in the gun. He got out. He got me up in the gun. He decided to drive because he wanted that control. He wanted that I'm in control of my destiny. He's my ATL. I say, Roger this. I have never worked the heavy machine gun in my life. Like that was never my role. I've done it, but like I was always the driver. I was always the nav man. So it's like, okay. So it's now dark. I have my nods down, which it's a single monocle. Everything is this sleepy shade of green is the best way I can describe it. If you've never looked through a monocle, and I am in charge of the entire front 180 of this convoy. So we start about 200 meters. We take a corner. We come around the corner, and Ballas, my team leader, asked me if the trucks behind us are up. So I remember I turned and I just watched our second truck flipping in space as what ended up being an IED with about probably, they think, 2 5-gallon drums of diesel fuel stacked on top of it. It made a crater about 8 to 10 feet across, but it flipped in a truck entirely. And so all of a sudden, like we're going, and all of a sudden this truck just starts going. It hit. And the problem with it is that Humvees are flat bottomed. So it basically channeled all the flames up into the cab and blew everybody out, or those who could. And so we had 2 guys die instantly inside the vehicle. 2 of my friends were thrown from the vehicle, but they were, all I can say is like burning effigies from Halloween, where they were just completely engulfed in flames, just running around. One got thrown so far that he got thrown into the lower field and was just running around on fire in the lower field, while the other one's running around up here. Elmo, the gunner, who to this day has my just profound, just an amazing guy. He was sitting up in his gun, and when the truck flipped, it threw him like a catapult, like probably 25 feet in front. He hit, he got up, and he ran. Oh, I'm going to cry. He ran back, and he tried to pull from the flames his friends, and he burned the shit out of his arms, like melted his Nomex gloves and stuff. But like Gunny Riv grabbed him, and like there was nothing to save. Like all 4 of those guys had just been, instantly killed. The problem for us and for me was twofold. One, I had not seen the IED. That was my job. That was as the lead vehicle. I was supposed to see that IED. I did not. I blame myself for that a lot. Two, there was no trigger man, so there was no one to vent our frustration on. But we knew who put it in because there's the village that all those people just came from to hold us in place. So while we were sitting there, they were basically making sure that we weren't coming around the corner to watch while they dug a 12-foot hole and buried IED material, 5-foot ground drums on it, and then proceeded to blow us up. But no one came out of their house. No one took a shot. No one, there was nothing to do. And that was, I think, the worst feeling I've ever had in my life, is being so angry and being so hateful and so full of all these emotions and not being able to do anything with it and just sitting there stewing and just like I all I wanted was for someone to just take a shot. That was it. I prayed to gods that someone took a shot at us so we could fight back. Because right then it just felt like we got hurt so badly and there was nothing to be done. All we could do was lick our wounds and drive home. And then like, it ended up we had to sit on scene for about 8 hours, just watching our friends get, carted off in the stretchers and stuff like that. 2 died on the scene. We got back to our battalion. And then, I believe 3 weeks later, both of the other men died. They were about 90% burns, 80% burns on their bodies. Like they didn't. And I remember the chaplain walking in and we were all cleaning our weapons and we're trying to get geared up for that next mission. And the chaplain walked in and I just like, something just crushed inside me. It was the worst feeling I've ever had. Because I knew at that moment that I had killed those guys, that I had caused this for my own, like I should have seen the IED. I should have been able to stop this from happening. It should have been me. It should have been our vehicle. You have all these terrible thoughts and like all this, you want to blame someone and there was nobody else around to blame. And so it ended up turning a lot of it turned on me. And it became very hard for me to separate myself from that for a very long time. Thank God for the VA, because that was where I think I started to finally part with some of that feeling and some of that like angst. But I would say those are the first 2 times where you realize that all those glorious stories and all those heroic things that you read about and stuff like that, like there's some bad stuff going to happen too. And it's not going to be pretty. And there's not always going to be a reason or rhyme why. It just bad shit happens and you have to deal with it. I remember cleaning up, getting chow, and 3 hours later we left on another mission. That was the job. Get up, do it again, head out on another mission.
Man. How many months were you in country when that night happened?
Not long. 2 months, not even like, so our first deployment was I'd say pretty fast going, but from the moment we got there to the moment shit started going real bad sideways was I want to say about 2 months, start to finish. And then it got a little, I hate to say it got worse, but it almost got worse. So pretty much from that point on, I don't think there was a day that someone left our battalion. Now, what people have to understand is our battalion's really tiny. Like Recon is not a big unit at all. Right. Like there was 120 shooters in Iraq, broken up into 3 companies. So, 60, like it is a small ass unit. There wasn't, I think, a day that went by that one of our trucks was not being hit by an IED. Now, most of them didn't do anything. Most of them either blew a tire off, took your bumper, broke an axle. But people were, it still was, that was your life. You were going to leave the wire and you were going to get hit by an IED and there was nothing you could do about it. We lost one of our better team leaders in another company. My best friend at the time, Stitch, was sitting in the back seat and watched his team leader basically get carved out of his Humvee. It literally took the passenger seat, the passenger door, and the roof, and it just shaved them off and sent him out in the field, and he was dead. And like this was just like on a daily basis. This was happening. This was happening. This was happening. And it got so bad that, and people, people find this strange, I guess, which I find strange. But every day, my truck was so close, and we were, I'd say, such, we liked each other so much that we would say "I love you" before we left the wire every time, because that was probably going to be the time. We had seen so many hits, so many trucks blow up at that time that, and on top of that, I have about 3 to 8 pounds of plastic explosives in our bumper because I'm the lead breacher. So we have extra fuel, and we were suicide vehicle. We were kept on suicide vehicle. We were never not suicide vehicle. And I I don't know if that was a curse or if that was just like I liked it because at least you were there and you felt like you had some kind of control because I was driving. I got put back in the driver's seat after that night. So you at least kind of felt like you were, in control of something, but like chances were we were going to be hit. It was a miracle that I wasn't hit, but the next time, and this is I'm going to jump forward a story if you don't mind. The next time we realized how bad everything was, we were doing a company-sized op, and nothing happened. We didn't get anybody. Like they were being so cagey at this point. There was no reason to come fight us. If you're fighting our unit, you were already just dead in the water. Like we are trained like nobody else. Our vehicles look like nobody else. Like we knew at the time that they were radioing in when our unit was leaving the wire. They knew us from every other unit that was operating out of Camp Fallujah. Hey, Recon's on the move. Stay low. Great. So we were trying to bait them and stuff like that. And we had a huge company op. So we have more trucks, 5 tons, everything. And we get told by platoon, hey, you're going to punch out first. You're going to be suicide patrol. So we get put on suicide patrol, suicide vehicle. So now there's 3 ways home. Only 3 roads lead back to Camp Fallujah. There was 100% chance all 3 were rigged at this point. We've been there a week. We haven't done any vehicle ops. We've had no EOD help at this point. We were so far out. So I'm in the lead vehicle. We have a high back, open back, like a medical truck, and then we have my captain's third vehicle. So we're doing a three Humvee patrol, which is crazy small. But it was like, hey, you're probably gonna get hit, and then we're gonna come save you. Okay, let's do this. So I get in the lead vehicle, and I just remember Marty, my medic, was like, whoa, I'm not driving my own truck. Who's driving? And he's like, oh, Mort's going to drive my truck. Mort's the best driver in the platoon. So I get taken out of my truck, and I get put in the second truck. And then Clark, in the book, who ends up going on to be probably the best operator Marines has seen in a very long time, gets taken out of the truck and put as the third driver of the third truck with our captain. So now we're like, we're refugees. We're not with our truck. Those are our boys up there. And they put a green kid, like a, fresh in country, hey man, welcome to the platoon. He was one of the replacements for the guys who died. So he hasn't even been there for the bad stuff. And he's just heard stories. And now he's the lead driver of the suicide vehicle. So we get in the car truck and we're driving down this village that is at one half, it is the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. It is truly a step back in time. It looks like the village scene from Aladdin. These beautiful, like just stone and cement buildings with the architecture, and like the only thing different is from that the movie to now is now there's bars in the windows. But besides that, giant, beautiful courtyards, palm trees everywhere. It's gorgeous. It is also the stronghold of the insurgency in the Zidon, and we know this. But our theory was that they'd least suspect us to go through there compared to the other 2 side roads that kind of meandered off. So we're going down through this village, and it is just harrowing. Like just clenched up. I remember Marty telling me stories about when he was, because he at this point is almost ending his career. He was a SARC, basically a recon Marine who's actually a Navy corpsman who's gone through recon training. They are crazy good stuff. So he's just telling me stories, and all of a sudden we're out of the village. Nothing happened. We're free. And just as we say this, the lead truck just boom, and the truck jumps up and just kind of skews to the side and lands, and the driver falls out. Scotty Boom falls out. And then no one else is. No one else is getting out of the truck. Now, the problem with Iraq at this time is IEDs were phase one of what they were starting to do. Phase two was either secondary IEDs, which is IEDs placed off the road, kind of counter, like almost like a Claymore mine, some kind of shrapnel based IED, or you hit the IED and then you have gunmen, snipers, marksmen, we'll say marksmen or machine guns waiting really pretty much right there. And on our right side is just this thick ass bunch of reeds on mostly our right side, but on both sides of the road, like you can't see outside of the road. And we're just like, and I look at Marty and he's like, oh, we're gonna get shot. I was like, okay. And we did the thing we're not supposed to do, which is we got out of the truck. Every SOP to that point, and I know this because I was the intel rep for my platoon, was to stay in the truck. Stay in the truck. We know your guys got hit, but stay in the truck. Like just let them. They're on their own. And I just remember being like, nope. And Marty, who was our medic's like, nope. So we got out of our truck and we run up, and Spears gets out of the turret. He has a softball size hole in his leg. He ended up losing his leg later. They amputated his leg. Scotty Boom had his bell rung. He was out for a little bit with a concussion. Our driver was out with a concussion. My team leader, I opened his door and there was nothing. The seat was gone. It basically had gone up under his seat, and I laid him down, and it was like 1,000 pinholes across his back wherever it was just flight suit, where like his bouncer had saved his, I'd say, chest, but I had to find if there was a bigger hole somewhere, and there was no seat. There was nothing left. Everything's in red light, so it's all bad. And he ended up surviving, but he got medevaced and he was gone. And then the only one who didn't get anything was we had a little combat engineer, Kien, in the back, who was sitting just low enough and sleeping that I don't know, baseball hat size piece of shrapnel that went through where anybody else's head was supposed to be, just like stuck in. And he just looked at it and he was like, oh, yep, that sucks. And just got out and helped us with everything. So then we had to pile everybody else in the medevac truck. We had to strip the first truck of all serialized gear because you can't leave anything serialized. So while we're doing this, the only thought, we're like, at least there's help on the way. Like as soon as we got hit, they put the call in, company is on the way. 4 seconds later, call comes in. Company has just been hit in the village. So they let us go by. They hit us. And then when the cavalry came to rescue us, they hit the cavalry. Truck is in the river. Guys hit it was mayhem. It was just absolutely mayhem. And not a single insurgent was seen that night. Not one person did we fight back. Not one person could we, be like, okay, there's the bad guy. It was just get in your trucks, go home. So I remember driving home in the open back, and Marty got out, took all the bad injuries into the Fallujah medical tent, and I drove back to battalion alone. My entire battalion's still gone, so I was just alone. And I just remember cleaning my weapons in the team room, just bawling, not knowing how to function as a human being at this point, because all of my team has been hit at this point. Like my whole team is now non-functional. I think me and Clark had to go with captain, were the only two who didn't get hit, and no one's around, and I had no one to talk to and no one to be like, hey, that was really messed up. And it was again, it was one of those eye-opening moments to the horrors of war, but also that there's nothing to be done about it, and you just have to get up and 2 days later, or not even 2 days later, not our team, but we got folded in. We went on another mission, another mission, another mission.
I have two questions. I know we're going to be pushing about 10 minutes here left, but one would be based off, it seemed, out of these stories you were saying like you didn't get that kinetic, like you didn't get the fight.
Hmm.
Did you ever get that chance? Did you ever get the chance to feel like, oh, I'm in a firefight, I can actually do something, or was it always this like this?
Some guys in my unit got that.
Yeah.
But I would say 95% of the time we never got that. The one time that we got what we thought was a win was we were coming back from this other horrible mission, which ended up being like we were protecting a very high level asset, who had come in country to do a meet and greet with one of the Iraqi assets. So they were meeting in this, we call it like the 1 mile city. It was like a mile by a mile, like a big wall, like an old style castle wall, mile by a mile. And everyone who was rich lived in this city, and everyone else, they would commute to Fallujah and all the other cities. But like this was like the rich, like Hollywood place around Fallujah. And so it became a hotbed for insurgent activity because they wanted to hurt anybody who had money, who could possibly fight back against them. They had wheeled a 4-barrel Russian anti-aircraft cannon up on a hill that overlooked this city, aimed it down into the city, and just shot at the police station for like 10 minutes about a week earlier. Like, I mean, like this was not, they would put up hasty roadblocks on the way to the city and then pretend to be the police. And if you showed that you were somebody with money or somebody who was influential, they grabbed you and you were now either a hostage or they just kill you right then. So we had to go do this basically like a high value escort slash VIP thing.
Mhm.
We did wonderfully. Everyone handshakes galore. Everyone felt really good. Nothing happened. On the way back from this city, Air calls in and is like, "Hey man, we have on camera a dude placing an IED for your convoy coming up. Here's the coordinates." And we're like, "Oh my God, this is it. We finally have actionable intel where they can tell us the house he's staying at. Because otherwise, you're just kicking in doors of innocent civilians." So we pull into the driveway. I mean, it was everything we had trained for. Here comes our 5 Humvees, boom, 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 exactly how they should be. Guys jumping before they're even stopped, hitting the ground. Everyone's, within 30 seconds, that entire compound is just secure. It was beautiful. It was like water flowing, and I remember being so pleased with how everyone did like it was just perfect. And we found more stuff than you could possibly imagine. Mortars, IEDs, RPGs, 50 cal sniper like I mean just the list was we started piling it up in their like driveway. And we were, I mean, like kids at Christmas, because here at the end of the first deployment, we finally got, here is some bad guys. They have more weapons on them and ID making material than you could possibly imagine. Like, this is a huge sell. So while we're there, the VIP that we had also been just escorting comes in and they're like, "Hey, what's going on here?" And we're like, "Oh, yeah, look at all this stuff." And all of a sudden, this very high ranking official comes out and he's like, "All right, cut them all loose." And we're like, "Wait, what?" He's like, "Cut them all loose." He's like, "I just got word that this guy is the son of a very prominent local leader and who's vouched for him and said this was all a setup and this, that, and the other thing, and to let him go." And we're like, are you kidding me, right? Like, they have more weapons than they're even supposed to be. He's like, I'm not asking, I'm telling. We're just like, all right. We're like, so they left an ID for us? He's like, "Don't care. Let him go." So we literally unstrapped them, handed back their weapons, and left. And it was I think the hardest drive home. Even the ones where we were, wounded and limping home, like that I could understand, but like I think that was the letdown of the whole thing. The time I was just like I felt very disillusioned because I thought we finally got the big win, and it apparently, again, politics is politics. I don't know what was happening behind the scenes, but Apparently, they didn't want this guy to be brought in.
Greg Yost, you took the words out of my mouth here in the chat. It's a great one. Greg Yost says, "Thank you for sharing these stories. They're horrific as they are. A lot of courage to talk about these." And I echo that, Brennan. Just to be able to climb this mountain with us is everybody here appreciates. I know that. Greg's question was, "Do you believe that you accomplished anything while you were there?" He doesn't mean the USA. He
No, no,
means you and your unit.
accomplish things personally. Yes, I feel like as a person, I grew. I feel like I became a better man, and I learned a lot about myself. Uh, I met a lot of people that I loved from there. There's again, I'm telling the horrible stories. If you do read the book, if you do get a chance to read the book, there are some beautiful people who lived in Iraq, and I hold no ill will to the people of Iraq. Um, I remember we sat and had drinks and food with this guy who lived local, who I think killed more insurgents than we ever did. And he was just one of those most interesting human beings. It's like, why don't you leave if you're being hunted by these guys? He's like, I've lived here for hundreds of years with my family's name. I'm not moving for anyone. And so like we met these amazing people, and like I remember we were driving out in the desert, and we met these people. When I say in the middle of a desert, like hundreds of miles from anywhere, just living in this beautiful red tent, happy as could be. They did not even know the war was going on, like at all. Like they didn't care. And so we had these moments of absolute levity and like beauty and joy. Um, I can still remember the fresh baked bread every morning that I could not wait to eat. Whatever, like, when we were at friendly houses, all the other guys in my units declined the food because they didn't want to get dysentery. But I, on purpose, gave myself dysentery, which is a funny story in the book. But I got to eat all their food all the time. And it was amazing food. And so, like, there was moments of like, I do think on a personal level, I think I became a much more well-rounded, better person. Uh, but as far as like, did I feel like we left Iraq better than when we got there? I can't say we did. I say we almost left it exactly as we came. Like we were when you're fighting ideology, you will never win because you're not fighting. There's no flag, there's no general, there's no one person. And if you just get that person, you can say, we're done, we win. And it was just like fighting a Hydra. You cut off one head and three would pop up. And so like it was a grind on a lot of the guys. And I think and I'm gonna say something that might be like I think the people who served in Vietnam and some of the other we'll call it like quiet wars, like man, I feel like it was kind of the same thing for a lot of those guys where take this hill. Well, come off the hill. Oh, go take it again. Oh, come off the hill. And all of a sudden, like, you're just like, why are we doing these things? Like, what is this? What is this in the bigger picture helping? And I I I got very disillusioned, but I still am proud. And that's why I make sure to tell people like I'm still proud as hell of the Marine Corps. And I'm still proud I served and I still would do it again, even after all the horrible things. Um, so I think there was some good personally out of it, that I still look back on those memories as like fondly, but I don't know. I can't say we did anything mission wise that I would be like, yep, mission accomplished.
Right. Um, I want to go to Brad again as a sort of Marine to Marine ending thought here, because I feel like Brad, I just trust you so much in the way that you able to sum up everything that Brennan's told us tonight.
Well, I just, I want to say, I think on behalf of the entire audience, Brennan, thank you for sharing your story. So often you hear thank you for your service, but we don't get to hear about the service like you have told us. I know it's very difficult. Most of us have not been in combat and experienced what you have. And you opened the door for this time that we've been together about what you experienced, not only there, but after also. So, we all are greatly appreciative. We don't get many Iraqi, Afghanistan vets on our show. And I think you really broke ground on helping others understand that war, but even more so the personal toll it takes on people, but yet the pride that you exhibit in serving our country and serving as a Marine. So, Semper Fidelis, brother.
Semper Fi.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Brad. Could not have said it better myself. And I again echo Brad's sentiments here, Brennan. I couldn't recommend your book more to everybody here. I know Brad's reading it. I know I enjoyed the heck out of it, the good and the bad. Because as a civilian myself, just being able to touch that edge and understand a bit about what it meant for you to serve and for your unit to serve and the guys you served with and all of it means a lot. And I want to thank you for that. Thank you for being with us here and for joining us and telling us about it. And you also have a sequel coming out of the book.
Yeah, that's gonna be a thing in works. I don't know how much I'm gonna. I have it written. I have stories. I have a lot of overflow stories. They're a little more of the blue stories though. Some of them are, I hate to say sexual, but like some of them are sexual. Some of them are just like offbeat stories of the Marine Corps and my time in the service. Cause like, I'm sure Brackett, as the head of SOI, I'm
Yeah.
sure he's had some stories of guys who've done some weird shit on leave. But I have a book that's full of those kind of stories too. Cause again, like I was writing everything. So I have I would say a much more like adult version of a book hopefully soon. I don't know. I'm having trouble getting back to it. I actually am a writer full time now. I have my third fantasy book in a series coming out relatively soon, so that's where most of my time is spent right now.
Excellent. Well, everyone here, check out Brennan Morton wherever books are sold. Definitely check out Valhalla Boys.